Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Ryan Downey. Ryan, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
Louis, I'm doing great. It's a bit rainy here in Toronto. We've had a little bit of the gray gloom of January, but it is warm in here, and we're going to be talking some fantasy hockey, so I couldn't be better.
Well, it's only going to get warmer because we are about to burn through an awful lot of players in a relatively short amount of time. I want to get right into it. They say that 2026 is the year of the horse, but I think we are actually in the year of the Hatty. We have now 8 hat tricks in 2026. Sourdif, Bertuzzi, Matthews, Gunther, Zibanejad, Regenda, Radish, and adding to the pile on Tuesday night, Sir Duke, Anthony Duclair, showing us that just because a shooter has a lane, don't make a goalie doubt. But you can tell right away when Markstrom plays that it's going to be a rout. And joining the ranks of the 2026 hat trick Havers, Ilya Sorokin had an outstanding game, stopping, I believe, 44 shots in the end. I think he might have lost a shot, but just an absolute 9-0 demolition, destruction of the New Jersey Devils. I think the last time I watched a game end to end that was this much of a demoralizing beatdown, it was 2002, Game 7. The Red Wings beat the Avalanche 7-0. Patrick Waugh was there. He picked up his glove, Statue of Liberty style, thinking he had the puck in it, and Brendan Shanahan poked it in. And I think his focus was lost from that point on. And really just during this game, nothing really demonstrated the gulf between the teams as much as a sequence late in the second period where Sorokin slid too far past the right post and was out of position while Jack Hughes carried the puck around the net. He had a chance with an open net, mishandled it, and by the time the Devils got control, the entire Islanders squad was laying out to protect that Sorokin shutout, even with a five-goal lead. Really just a hapless efforts from the Devils and an overwhelming victory for the Islanders.
Louis, just out of curiosity's sake, did any of the New Jersey Devils score on their own net in this game, or were they able to improve on that this time around?
I actually missed the first goal, so that may have been one. I did enjoy a sizzle reel on ESPN Plus of New Jersey own goals. That seemed unnecessarily cruel, but it was one of the most entertaining parts of the broadcast. That was otherwise a lot of butt kissing.
Yeah, the poor old New Jersey Devils, we were talking a little bit before the record, they're embroiled in some kind of malaise here, and tonight's beatdown, as you mentioned, is probably not going to help them. They can't score, as was evidenced by tonight's game, and they've been trying everything that they can to try and generate offense, even going so far now as to stack the top line with Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, and Jesper Bratt. They went to that look. It's been a thing since December 31st, and in that time, the line has been outchanced at even strength. And given that they were shut out tonight, I think this is probably still accurate. They've only contributed one even strength goal together over those 4 games now that they've been together. If it wasn't for the power play, it is doubtful to me that New Jersey even got any victories this past week. Bratt, for his part, has 4 points in his last 9 games and 9 points since the beginning of December, a period spanning 18 games, which of course corresponds with Jack Hughes being out. We do now have Jack Hughes playing, and I think he's clearly not 100%. As Elon mentioned on the Mega Show, Hughes has been a disappointment for his fantasy managers who were expecting first-round pick production upon his return, only 5 points in 7 games since his return on December 21st. To me, Louis, and I don't know if you agree with me here, but I think this is about what we can expect from Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt until at least the Olympic break. Both guys are expected to play key roles for their Olympic teams, so it's not like they're getting any rest over that time. I think that Hughes is probably going to need to rest up to get to 100%, and this could be a situation where if they're able to get out of this funk and have a chance at the playoffs, maybe he will be rested. So I don't know if we're going to get that first-round pick Jack Hughes at all for the rest of this season, personally.
Yeah, and I wonder, too, if, moving forward, apologies to Jack Hughes for the kitchen injury related bit here, but how many times are people willing to touch that hot stove of Jack Hughes in the first round? I wonder if we have seen the end of round one Jack Hughes. I wonder if maybe the Olympics and just playing with some different players might give them an opportunity to work on some parts of that game. I don't know. This is all feelings ball. I don't like it right now. It concerns me. It kind of is like the Blues where the team there's something off. And it seems like it's going to take a lot of work to repair. And, if you are someone hanging on to Jack Hughes right now, you're kind of wondering what is that repair going to take? What is it going to look like? I think you are right to be worried.
Speaking of the Blues, Lewis, you started off so positive and so full of joy. Your beautiful singing voice, I must say, ringing through my ears here. And then I had to bring it down by talking about how bad New Jersey has been. It's the year of the Hatty, like you said. And we need to bring it back to, I think, one of the most, exciting fantasy performances we've seen maybe all season from Justin Sourdif last night of the Washington Capitals. He had 3 goals and 2 assists last night for 21 fantasy points. Last night, of course, being Monday. For those of you who don't know who this guy is, he arrived in Washington before free agency opened in 2025. The Washington Capitals acquired him from the Florida Panthers for what seemed like a pretty large price, 2026 second-round pick and a 2027 sixth-round pick. A lot of us were kind of raising our eyebrows at that, and I think now we understand a little bit more why Washington was able to pay up for this guy. I did ask Victor Nuno earlier today about Sourdif if he is just a guy. And his response to me, Lewis, believe it or not, was sort of. Classic dad joke. To go on a little bit, he did say he's the kind of guy that has hard skill, the kind that lets you play higher in the lineup than you probably should, that he's above replacement level, but not a must-keep kind of guy. So I know there's a lot of people who are very interested in this player right now. Certainly, as he has the deployment he has right now, I'd say keep him. But he's the kind of guy that once he goes cold, you can feel pretty confident moving on from him.
Yeah, I kind of think of him like when Emmett Finney was totally on fire earlier in the season, but also, you want to stick around for as long as that fire lasts, but be ready to get out when it fades. I agree with you. I think this is the kind of fantasy performance that people talk about all year. In a few years, I'm sure the people who streamed in sort of for Monday are going to say, oh, I remember back when. But I agree with you. I think, you've seen the best of what he can do already. Obviously we wouldn't expect that kind of performance game in and game out, but I think that's going to be, several standard deviations away from probably his next best effort. But with that great schedule, really nice if you were able to grab some caps, because that Leonard, McMichael, and Sourdif line that was mentioned on the Mega Show really, really performed in an outstanding way. Also saw a couple goals for Obi, one with the open net, or the empty net, I should say. So, yeah, all around a very nice performance for most of those Washington assets. Ryan, there's been so many big-time headlines. I think we, have buried one of the most important stories here. I think we've gone on long enough. We've got to talk about the injuries in New York for the Rangers.
Talking about flames being extinguished, I don't think New York Rangers fans needed any more bad news, but Igor Shesterkin did leave the game on Monday after a lower body injury. Some pretty shocking footage, I would say, came out of him not being able to leave the ice on his own power. Fortunately, Emily Kaplan had an update earlier today, hearing that the worst-case scenario with Igor Shesterkin was avoided after he left last night's game with a non-contact injury. So maybe his groin is not shredded cheese. Maybe it's just a little off the bone. For the replacement, the handcuff, as it were, in this situation, Jonathan Quick was snapped up in Tier 2 San Jose within seconds, I would say, of this injury happening. Clearly, someone was watching, I think, probably in most of our couple divisions. No, Lewis?
Yeah, absolutely. In mine as well, he went within about 5 minutes of the announcement. I was still sort of going back and forth, and I figured if I waited that long, I wasn't going to get him, and I was right.
Yeah, I think you're not going to regret making that decision, Lewis, to not go for him. He has had good numbers, certainly in limited action this season, with a 2.23 goals against average, a .919 save percentage, and 6.69 goals saved above expected. But remember, he is kind of a backup's backup at this point. The last time he had a starter's workload in New York was last year, around this time, actually, when Shesterkin was injured. And he didn't have a great time in the period from December 23rd to January 7th. 1 win, 4 losses with 2 really bad starts. 3 of those games, he led in 5 goals, and 6 goals against. Only one of those, the win, was a quality start. 3.6 goals against average at an .871 save percentage. And he's older now by a whole year. So I think Shesterkin, hopefully he isn't out too long. I know that the Rangers last season played the crap out of Shesterkin after he came back. And so they'll look to probably do that soon as well when he gets back.
Yeah, I like your description of Quick as a backup's backup, because he has at times been the ultimate backup start. But I agree with you. I'm a little nervous, especially with the Rangers not giving us a whole lot offensively, trying to get some wins out of a quick move. And it's only going to get harder because Adam Fox, just recently reintroduced to the lineup, has been moved to long-term injured reserve with a lower body injury. Reports from the team say that further evaluation is needed before they can determine an estimated return. So for now, the answer is long-term. Not great. I ran to the Keeping Karlsson short shift secret chat to gauge interest in Gavrikov now that Fox is out long-term, and I got a lot of resistance. After you and Sham shared your thoughts, I decided that years of a 0D strategy has me looking at crusts of bread like they're a feast. Ryan, you feel like Gavrikov is a shiny object best ignored then?
I do, Lewis, and you've given me a great opportunity to plug the Thursday episode of Short Shifts, which will be a solo episode featuring myself. And I've done a lot of research in cohort with my good friend John Bruno. A lot of you know Jay Brew. He does a lot for us around the Discord, and with the Cupful, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. We collaborated on this episode for Thursday, where we're going to be talking about those 5 games in 7 days segments. And so we talked about this a couple weeks ago, you and I, Lewis, on the podcast. I was asked to go into a little bit more detail by members of the Short Shifts chat. And so we are moving forward with that. It'll be, somewhere between a half hour to 45 minutes of a full analysis of those 5 and 7. And I did look at Gavrikov's performance in the most recent 5 and 7 by New York prior to Christmas. You would think that Gavrikov, with 131 minutes on the ice, 26 minutes a game in those 5 games, would be able to do something with it. Unfortunately, you would be wrong. He had 1 assist and just very pithy peripherals for a total of 10 fantasy points. That's 2 fantasy points per game in those 5 games. And so, yes, although I think we all saw Gavrikov get on the power play, have that power play goal earlier this week, I don't think he is someone that you should go after for, the Fox injury replacement.
Yeah, and Scott Morrow has been called up, and he got some time on that top power play too, although it didn't do a whole awful lot. I'm just kind of worried about it. JT Miller is injured still. Now Fox is out long term. I think it's bad for everybody. I have JT Miller coming back off injured reserve here in the not too distant future, and I'm a little shaky about his prospects.
And just to wrap up the injury talk here, I want to cover what happened in Los Angeles yesterday. Anze Kopitar left the game. Yoel Armia did not finish the game. He sat on the bench and didn't have a shift after the second period. Dennis Bernstein, the Kings beat reporter, had this to say, that the Kings may have dodged a bullet on Anze Kopitar's injury, that he walked out of the room post-game and out of the building with no apparent limp after leaving after the first period with a lower body injury. No update on Armia, but it does indicate to me that there will be some new lines for Los Angeles tomorrow. I know the Kings canceled their practice today, so we didn't get a chance to look at it. But if you look at those guys and where they're positioned in the lineup, it does look like the entire top 6 will be upended, at least for a game or two. If you ask for my best guess, Quinton Byfield will probably get another chance to prove he can lead the team, and they'll probably end up leading on Corey the Worm Perry even more than they have been. Maybe an expanded role for Andrei Kuzmenko, too. We'll just have to wait and see. Perhaps I will cover it on Thursday's edition of Short Shifts.
And always worth keeping an eye on GameDayTweets.com, which Shams and Elon populate with the most reliable beat writers with all of the latest information. All right, we're going to jump into a quick break here. We'll see you on the other side to talk some oucheries, some hot and cold streaks. You're listening to Short Shifts.
The holidays are heating up on Pick 6, DraftKings' newest fantasy pick'em game. Make your NBA picks for a shot to win big cash prizes this holiday season. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats. The more accurate your picks, the bigger the payout. It's the kind of upside you'll only find on Pick 6, not those other pick'em sites, and it's available in most states, including Texas, California, Georgia, and more. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. New DraftKings customers can play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits with code THPN. Ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. In Connecticut, must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Limited time offer.
Welcome back to Short Shifts. All right, we promised you some outjuries, some players returning to the lineup. I want to start in Carolina with the return of Seth Jarvis. Coach Rod Brindamore confirmed that Jarvis would be playing on Tuesday. There were no plans to ease him back into things. He would have full deployment. He went out there with Martinuk Stahl, but he was playing on the top power play. And the crowd went wild on Star Wars night when Jarvis unleashed the revenge of the Seth, drawing a penalty and burying a wacky carom off the dasher past Ettinger, who force-choked away another game. That would be the last goal against that Ettinger would see. Patron Weatherman29 in the Patron Discord found this stat for us. Jake Ettinger has allowed 4 or more goals in 7 games this season and has 15 games where he's allowed at least 3. A lot of struggles for Ettinger right now. But not really, not a lot of actionable info for you there either. You just got to kind of hang in there and hope the Stars figure it out.
And fantasy managers who hung in with Nikolai Ehlers are being rewarded now because as we broach the midway point of this season, we do see a Nikolai Ehlers that is more closely resembling the one that people drafted in the 4th and 5th round of their fantasy drafts this season. 18 points in 22 games through the second quarter of the season, with 8 power play points contributing to that total. So he looks to be back to normal and perhaps even a little bit better than normal. It's not just the power play time that is contributing, although he has been, Lewis, getting a whopping 80% of the power play time since the end of December. And I did read a tweet earlier today from Walt Ruff suggesting that Ehlers has been playing on both of those power play units at points within the same game. So that's probably where the 80% comes from. He does, as you mentioned earlier, find himself on the top line once again with Sebastian Aho and a resurgent Andrei Svechnikov, who honestly we could also be talking about right now in the same vein. Since Ehlers got bumped up to the top line on December 30th, he has 5 points in 4 games, no signs of stopping. His shooting percentage and points per 60 are all holding steady, and his PDO is actually still lower than you'd expect. So I think we might still be seeing something resembling the production the Hurricanes and fantasy managers were expecting when they signed Ehlers long-term.
Hey, that's outstanding. We spent years waiting to see the full Ehlers deployment, and now we're getting to see it, and it's been quite enjoyable. Outstanding. All right, next up, we have an ouchery for Jason Zucker. They finally decided to activate him after stashing him fantasy hockey style on IR, as was discussed on the Mega Show on Sunday. Lindy Ruff said he wanted Zucker to be angry that he wasn't put back sooner. He also said that there was nobody else who deserved to come out of the lineup. Mind games aside, I think, these people are all adults here. I don't know about that strategy, but hey, Lindy Ruff's been a coach in the NHL for a long time. He must know how to do some things, and maybe that's an effective trick to motivate folks. Zucker played on the second line with Norris and Tuck and played on power play 1 with Thompson, Dahlin, Norris, and Doan. He was on a 4-game point streak when he left the lineup due to that lower body injury. He looks poised to have the deployment to keep that going and continue to perform around his career peak of 70-point pace. He's only 10% owned on Yahoo, so with the way Buffalo is rolling, another win today. If he has found his way to your waiver wire, consider maybe even pausing the pod to run out there and grab Zucker while he's in that spot. Not a lot of line 2 power play 1 guys necessarily out there on teams that are winning a lot of games in a row.
I'm just kind of struck here, Lewis, about the fantasy hockey style management that Buffalo seems to be getting away with here. There are other teams, fortunately, that make it a little bit easier to know when players are coming back. And there are teams that announce when players are traveling with them on the road trip that they're on. And we got a couple of those players to talk about here. I've titled this segment, Injured Players Winging Towards Outjuries, because, of course, they're on the private jets with their teams on these road trips. It was announced on Monday that Matthew Tkachuk is traveling on the Florida Panthers' upcoming road trip and that it's possible he could return at some point in that span. They do play 6 games over the next 2 weeks on the road against Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Buffalo in the Atlantic road trip before a few days off, resuming in the Metro at Carolina and Washington. I doubt they would bring him to Canada, Lewis, if he wasn't going to play in those first 4 games. I could just be reading the tea leaves here. I think he could just join the team in Carolina, which is pretty close to Sunrise, if that was the plan. So I'm expecting a Tkachuk return before Monday of next week. Another player who is traveling with his team on their road trip is Bo Horvat with the Islanders. The Islanders embark on their long western road swing over the next 2 weeks. This one is a little less easy to intuit as the Islanders just get farther and farther from Long Island the longer the road trip goes, starting in Nashville and wending their way through Minnesota, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and finishing off in Seattle before the long flight back home to face Buffalo on Saturday, January 24th. Horvat should return at some point in that time frame, as his injury was listed as day-to-day, but it's unclear what the target date might be as of yet.
All right, outstanding. Well, let's run into some hot and cold streaks here. I want to start in Toronto, a team that you know a thing or two about. We've been pretty excited about this Toronto offensive resurgence. Saw another victory here on Tuesday, and among the players scoring during that game, Matthew Knies, 1 goal, 1 assist, a guy that I was pretty nervous about a few weeks ago when he was, initially booted off that top power play and banished to the bottom 6. But he's been on a nice little roll here.
Yeah, that banishment was kind of overturned after a 5-game, 7-point streak was capped off last Thursday. He did go pointless on Saturday against New York, but as you said, came back tonight with a goal and an assist, and he is shooting again. He had 16 shots on net during that point streak earlier last week. In the vein of Brian saying that Owen Tippett is what he is on the Mega Show and not that he's just hot, I'm kind of going to say the same thing about Matthew Knies. Knies has 36 points in 37 games this season, and he's put a bit of a rough patch in December behind him. When you strip that stretch out, that 1 assist in 8-game stretch, Knies has a remarkable 35 points in 29 games. You might recall, Lewis, that Knies is prone to some December malaise, as some fantasy managers may also recall, myself included, from last season. Last season, he only marked 4 points in the month of December, despite playing every game that month, and then his January 2025 over a point per game. So, Knies managers, I think you can get ready for this to continue. The breakout is real and continuing despite the January gloom we are experiencing here in Toronto. And while we're in Leafland, we should probably take the opportunity to bring up Matias Maccelli, who is still holding down that top power play spot in the absence of William Nylander. 6 points in 8 games since re-entering the lineup on December 20th, and 2 of those are power play points. So I think Berube would be well served to keep him in the lineup when Willie returns. He may disagree with me. But he may not have a choice with the likes of Dakota Joshua out indefinitely with a lacerated kidney. You're definitely playing Maccelli over a Jacob Quillen, who was brought up to replace a guy like Joshua, for instance. And I think he should also potentially be in the lineup over a Yarncroc type as well, especially for a team whose offensive production has come in fits and spurts this season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he, is finding a pretty nice role here, dishing the puck around, especially as a lot of that talent returns, although access to that top power play, obviously keep an eye on Nylander's potential return because that could spell the end of some of the best deployment for Maccelli, although it might also represent a nice little boost at even strength. So.
Yeah, and Lewis, you've been watching Bobby McMann recently. He had an empty net goal, so 5 points in the last 4 games. I'm sure he's loving having Matthews back at 100% and stuffing those stats, giving those GMs nearly 4 shots on goals, 1.5 hits, and a half block per game. I'm kind of jealous of you that you have him and I don't.
Well, I was nervous for a little bit because Maccelli was kind of the one who was taking off on scoring, but I'm liking these high teens minutes. Like you said, he's kind of filling the stat sheet there. So he's a guy that I have kept around, even at the expense of a much higher pedigree guy that I drafted much higher, Jordan Kyrou, who I cut loose this week. I mentioned before, I feel like the Blues are kind of in that New Jersey zone of just sort of the team is kind of bad right now and it's affecting everybody in a way that is hard to kind of escape that inertia sort of. I looked at it and I said, look, I got a guy playing almost 20 minutes and scoring and giving me some other periffs along the way. And I've got a guy who is basically Brock Besser with fewer minutes. It was a no-brainer to drop Kyrou. So I saw at least one other team in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League did that as well. So farewell, Jordan Kyrou. It was not that nice, but it was nice to think about what it could have been. If we want to look at kind of the diet version of Bobby McMann, you might look to Tampa Bay engage Goncalves, who is playing on the top line with Point and Nikita Kucherov. He's played 6 games in that spot. He was scoreless on Tuesday, but had 5 points in the 5 previous games. It's a nice streak and a good spot to play. I just think it's a lot riskier because the minutes are so low. He's playing 10, 11 minutes, whereas McMann is giving you 17, 18, 19. I think that it's great to be in a spot where you can contribute, and I think the scoring streak is nice, and I think there's a reasonable chance that he could, put up a point every other game or 2 points every 3 games even from that spot for a while. But unless the minutes improve significantly, I think it's going to be really hard for him to, maintain 5 points in 5 games, 5 points in 6 games.
I'm going to let you on a little bit of a secret here, Lewis. The reason why the minutes are low is because they don't trust him. He is just a guy. I think in the AHL, he was an assist-first guy who didn't really get involved in the play beyond the perimeter, which you can do in the AHL. If you can pass better than everybody else, you're going to get points. And he, that is a skill he has. He doesn't shoot, and he hits just enough to stay in the lineup. And on most other teams, he probably would not be on the NHL team. But this is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has no assets and no cap space, and so here he is. Basically, he's there as a backboard to get the puck back to Kucherov or Point. But hey, you can't argue with results in fantasy hockey. And you're right, he's currently outpointing the likes of Jordan Kyrou and Brock Besser. So as long as this is happening, you might as well get in on it.
Yeah. You want to look at the present situation. You don't want to get too hung up on what you spent or what they're doing. I think, it's a time of year where you can start to make some of those cuts, maybe to improve your roster overall. Ryan, we covered a ton of information here. Super fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. I can't wait to listen to your Thursday solo show and hear the fruits of you and John's research. I think it's going to be really interesting thinking about those 5 in 7s, especially, in an Olympic year where you got that compressed schedule. You're going to see it much more than you would otherwise. Thank you, listeners, so much for joining us. Of course, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast. So it's always there in your feed. If you want to leave us some commentary about how you think we're doing, things that you would like to improve, we are always dying for any kind of constructive criticism. If you want to say nice things, great. If there's something you would rather see, that is also great. We really, we want to be responsive, right? We want to give the people what they want. And if you liked what you saw here, you might consider heading to keepingkarlsson.com/patron, where you can join the Patreon group. Super supporters receive ad-free episodes, and all patrons can interact with Brian, Elon, the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of other talented fantasy managers on our active Discord server. As a bonus, some teams are coming open here in the mid-season. You can get some practice playing in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League by taking over a team in need of a manager. So a fun opportunity that's open for you, just to dip your toe in and prepare yourself a little bit for next season. I mentioned this before, but check out Game Day Tweets to get all the best information from X, team by team, and searchable tweets by player name. It's so useful for researching this episode. I am using it constantly, like when I'm supposed to be doing other things. So please visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.